Wow. Okay, here we are. What a wonderful opportunity to get together again tonight. This is our social event. I don't know whether there is something to enjoy, like food, drink, because it's a major celebration we're talking here tonight. And I cannot be more proud to be here to join you and help you celebrate this major achievement. Another one, of course. So we know TBTI Japan has been established since 2020. Yinji was working hard to make this happen. They already have published one book that is called An Era of Change, Big Change, and something beautiful about small-scale fisheries. And it was such a popular book. It started with beautiful cover, very, pink and a lot of sakura flowers and a really nice looking cover book, right? You have a copy? Yeah. Not this one, the other one. Just want to show the first book. Yes, your book, but that would work too. I would just show that. Okay. Why are we writing books? What we want to communicate, right? We want to let people know what we do. But writing papers is absolutely boring, even if Mike can do a good job and Kate has written beautiful papers and books. It's kind of good, but for the people to read it, this one has been one of the most popular book, and I'm trying to show it to the camera here, right? In some ways, because it's written with the people in mind and trying to communicate what we researchers do and think and feel and appreciate about the world of small-scale fisheries. So Professor Svein Jentoft wrote this book because he was frustrated more than anything else. Why do they keep talking about life below water? This is what SDG 14 is about. And he knows, he's been working for 50 years in small-scale fisheries and know that there is way more than life below water. And that's where things really matter. So he picked up this concept from the SDG 14, life below water, and said, look, how about life above water? So this book was the first book that TBTI Global ebook series published. And it has license number, it has ISBN, it has, a running number. So it's serious book, even though you might not be able to count it towards your tenure and promotion. But definitely you can get funding by writing these books because people read it. So high impact book, I would say, right? Well, the real impact of the book is when people pick it up and become inspired by it. Inspired because it speaks to the people. So TBTI Japan has already published one book about Japanese small-scale fisheries. But for some reason or another, they picked up this book and said, but wait a minute, there's a lot of goodies in this book that should also be translated into Japanese. And therefore, we are here today to enjoy that preview, I would call, of this book. It will soon be publicly released, but we want to take this opportunity to talk to our authors of the book and have good conversation about why they want to publish a book, translate this book into Japanese. And I really don't know what life above water is translated to in Japanese, but I would let them tell us later. But for now, I would like to start the session with the greeting from Professor Svein Jentoft, who unfortunately cannot be here with us, but he has already sent a recorded message.
One, I hope you're well. It is indeed a great honor for me to be invited to give this introductory talk. It's awesome to think about that my book is now translated into Japanese. And for that, I thank from the bottom of my heart. I wish I could be with you in person rather than speaking here from my home kitchen table, which is far less exciting, of course, for me. I live in the very far north of Norway, where the winter has not receded yet. I once, must have been in 1988, I think, had the great experience of visiting Japan with a group of my students. We traveled around the country visiting fishing communities. I had then already developed an interest in Japanese fisheries, which was then reinforced. I was particularly interested in Japan's experience with cooperatives and community-based fisheries management. In Norway, we also have a cooperative tradition, and it was intriguing to me to compare the two situations. I think both countries have both lessons that other countries might learn from. Many things have, of course, changed since I visited Japan more than 30 years ago. It's certainly true for Norway, and I would assume the same is the case for Japan. Fisheries are, as we know, a dynamic system undergoing constant change, but we learn from history to understand how we arrived at the present situation. Comparing Japan and Norway would therefore not be just about how our two industries were historically and currently are, but also about how they have changed and why. Observing differences are interesting, but we learn even more when we discover how differences make a difference, like for how Japanese and Norwegian fisheries are functioning. As a social scientist, my area of research is about life above water, as is the title of my book. Life above water works differently from life below it. Life below water is life above water is about us, the life we live in families, communities, and in the workplace. We depend on each other and must therefore learn to relate and interact. Together, we build institutions to create social order and to solve societal problems. Life above water may seem chaotic at times. We do not always succeed in making life easier for ourselves. We often create our own problems, but together we must solve them. Nature has given us some opportunities to make the best out of what we got. Japan and Norway have both long coasts and rich fisheries resources. Although our situations are different, we have things in common. We struggle to manage our fisheries sustainably. We try to make fisheries a lucrative industry while maintaining our fisheries communities and our cultures. That means those things that make life meaningful and matter deeply to us. Those are no easy things to achieve, but we seek to do it in ways that are both different and similar. Over the years, Japanese and Norwegian fisheries scholars have visited each other, expecting to learn from our different systems. I remember several Japanese visitors to my university, and I have published with a Japanese colleague where we compared our two systems. We did it, of course, for a reason that for the reason that we thought of learning from comparing. We easily get stuck in our own systems. We have difficulties imagining how they can be different than they are. There is nothing natural about our institutions. We made them and we can change them. We create and change the rules we live by all the time, but we do so within the ramifications of our imaginations. I therefore believe that we could accomplish more, create a better fishery systems in our own situation if we compare what we do with what other countries do in their fisheries. Comparison is a way to broaden our mindset and thus make the changes we need to do without knowing how. When countries are confronting the same problems and challenges like protecting their marine ecosystems from overfishing, their governance systems may look alike. Thus, a person traveling from Norway to Japan or a person arriving in Norway from Japan would recognize their own systems in the other system. We have things in common and can talk easily to each other. We can compare experiences and learn from similarities and differences. Differences may be small, but they may have a huge difference. We would also expect that such difference would disappear when we copy each other's solutions and ideas, which is, by the way, not always a good idea because context always matters. This is, however, what globalization does to fisheries these days and what fisheries experts like academics advocate. Globalization may be good or bad, but it makes us think alike. This is a topic I do not touch much in my Life Above Water book, but I discuss it more in the follow-up book, which I'm working on now. Our institutions often have a deep history that is unique to our country, and rarely they have evolved over a long period of time, often incrementally and rarely to a grand design. There are, however, periods in our history marked by ground-setting institutional innovations, like in Norway in the 1930s, in the aftermath of the international fisheries crisis. Our fisheries work today according to rules established then. I know that Japan is no different in this respect. Once institutions have lasted a while, we take them for granted. Then we stop noticing the difference they make. We may need to go abroad to see them from a distance to notice them. You may know the saying that the fish is the last to discover the ocean. We may have forgotten why institutions were established in the first place and cannot imagine how our fisheries system would work without them. The old problems they were meant to solve may emerge again if they were abolished. We would also expect that fisheries are not governed differently from other natural industries in their country, like forestry and agriculture. They are all depending on healthy ecosystems. economies, and communities. We would not therefore expect fisheries to be governed fundamentally different from other nature-based industries. Instead, we would expect that they are governed according to consistent principles and institutional designs that are unique to a particular country and not to a particular industry. Thus, we have two hypotheses that we can test. When comparing fisheries systems between countries like Japan and Norway, we may find them to be similar for reasons that have to do with their similar problem structure. Or alternatively, we may find them to be different because of their particular institutional histories. I'm not sure what such a comparison between Japan and Norway would yield if we were to undertake such a study. It might, however, generate the same result that we found in a study where we compared fisheries governance systems among European countries. They appeared to be more different than similar. European fisheries systems are different for reasons that have to do with their country-specific institutional histories. But there is an ongoing convergence now between countries that are members of the European Union and its common fisheries policy. The advisory council system that is established for all regional seas is an example. I think we should make a greater effort of comparing our systems than we currently do. That is also what TBTI aims to do, and we have produced many books and papers to that effect. We recognize ourselves not only in our own image, but also in the image of others. We recognize ourselves in where we are equal to others, but also in where we are different. This is how I would like my book to function. By translating it into Japanese, I hope you will not only learn from what I have written about Norway and other places, but also about Japan, which I do not write about. But that is something for you to decide. Thank you very much. I wish you a great conference. And again, I wish I could have been there with you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, this is great. So I think it would be fantastic if we can just, get the panel going, because I think that's the main reason, right, why we are here. Yinji, are we following the order in this stuff in terms of comment? Not exactly. Okay. So how do you want this to run? Oh, are you starting? Are you the first person? Would you be speaking first? Or who's speaking first? Well, I mean, somebody has to tell me, right? About, first of all, why you want to write this, translate this book. And what is it called in Japanese as a starting point? I wanted to go sit down rather than stand here. Is that okay? Yeah, but I have to leave my computer here. Okay, all right. Never know. I just. So yes, that is much better. Okay, it's fantastic, right? That you have decided that you would translate this book into Japanese. But before anything else, why? Whose idea? And why did you want to do it? What do you want to achieve with this translation?
Okay. Yeah, I think that was my idea, and thank you very much for agreeing to my idea and being supportive. I would like to thank you, Professor Ratana. And yeah, yeah, the most reason that I want and I had this idea is because I was really attracted to this book. This the important reason. And and when I read this book, well, it's an in essay style. It's very kind to us, I mean, who's not that familiar with English. And also I don't know, just when I read this book, I really think every chapter, when I read every chapter, I really think we really need to have people in Japan to know about these things in Japan. So yeah, that's I think why and how have
And
that idea.
so then tell us then what was then what did you do? Because you brought so many people together to write to, and it's not just about translation, it's also about adding adding elements to the book. It's also written by fishing people, the cooperatives, for instance. And so you have at least many people here. So Yinji, why don't you introduce us a little bit so that we know who's who, and then we can have then I would be able to ask a question about them, their role in this book specifically.
Well, since we had the first book, TBTI Japan book, and I think from first I think I had this idea to just bring people together to translate this book, and we have about 22 translation authors in this book, and for about 14 the short communication essay contributors, including fisheries cooperatives and government officers, and people in here. Translate authors from the university, from the research institutions, Ryutaro Kamiyama and Dr. Kamiyama, Dr. Namigawa, and Professor Tetsu Sato Sensei, and Segi Sensei and Shiraka Sensei. Yeah, and thank you so much for agreeing to our plan. And I would like to also thank you, my co-editor, Dr. Namigawa. Yes.
Thank you. It's important, right? It's not a book that can be done on, translating anything is difficult to start with. But you are really, you do what I would call value addition to the book. It's good to be able to communicate what is written to the Japanese colleagues and also the communities. But then you must bring more you are bringing more to the book by having these contributed authors as well. I only, I know I have been working with, and now I have to call him Sensei too, right? Setsu, right? Because we have been knowing it, like communicating, interacting with each other for some time now. And I know you work in Africa, but you also work in Japan, and now you're talking about this. Could you share with us what it means, right? This concept, life above water, in the context, in your experience, and how that relates to people in Japan.
Thank you, Ratana. I think, first of all, I really want to express my thanks to Inji and Tamano-san for bringing about this really exciting experience. First of all, it is not, as you indicated, it is not a simple translation. And each translator was asked to give some comments on the chapters they translate. This is an amazing idea, I would say. I saw the email from Inji, and wow, what is this type of translation? It is not a simple translation, but rather making, as you said, value addition, but it's not simply adding value. For example, in my case, I really wanted to critically comment on the chapter. And it is a kind of encounter of different perspectives or different epistemological communities. In my case, for example, I have it from the Japanese perspective and also African perspective. And this type of experience is quite new to us. And I was wondering if TBTI book is always taking this type of styles to translate, but I don't think so. So I really admire the effort of Inji and Tamano-san. You are genius. And so this book is a typical example of encounter of different epistemological communities. That means this book itself is functioning as a kind of boundary object to connect to different cultures, different value systems, or even different knowledge systems. And in that sense, this is very unique. So I really think this book may be used as a kind of stimulation of new type of thinking by integrating different epistemological communities. That is my impression. Thank you.
That's great. So it was challenging to do because it's not just a simple translation. You're supposed to almost, put yourself in there and trying to, I don't want to use the word interpret or anything like that, but at least you have to find a way to relate to the material and thinking about your audience. And that is what breaking that boundary also means, I think. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would say it was interesting and exciting.
This is good. This is good.
I just forgot to mention that I need to introduce one more author in the book joining us from Zoom, Professor Morishita from Tokyo. Yes, there. I'm so sorry about that.
I don't have, I don't know, I'm not looking at Zoom. So if you, why don't you stay on, or we'd make sure that we capture the professors. So in case you want to say something, we know, right? Because I'm not looking at the computer at the moment. So it was a challenging assignment from Yunji and Tamano, right? Because they have a vision about this, right? So did you talk a lot about among yourself as you were doing this, or you kind of working on your own for your chapters that you were asked to do? Can someone, Tamano, can you talk about the process of what you had to do to put this book together?
First I heard was this book from Inji at about in September or so. But so we don't have enough, we cannot say we have enough time that, but yeah, it is important to try. So first I joined, I said yes, but then after that, we have to choose who translates this, who can help us, or who join this. It is very short time. So, but at last, 22 person can help us. It's really thanks. I think.
Because you can basically just get someone to translate, right? And you would just read it and you just edit and make it look good. But you decided that no, you're gonna just find people who you would like to ask to read and translate. So to me, you are basically doing a lot more than what normal translation of a book would be about. Right. So I'm gonna try to get more feedback here because I'm super curious, right, about the experience. Professor Hidaka, yes, could you share with us a little bit? I mean, I don't know what chapters you were responsible to do, and how do you feel about it as you were translating this?
Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is Takeshi Hidaka from Kindai University. In the translation of this book, I was in charge of chapter 1. And why the social science of fisheries? And my research area is coastal area management and regional resource management, mainly from the perspective of sociology. The content of chapter 1 and my research are very related. My recent research theme is how coastal residents, mainly fishermen, manage coastal areas. The sea properly managed by the people living in the coastal areas with increased productivity and biodiversity is called Satoumi, which means the sea near the village in Japanese. The targets of my research are fishermen, communities, organizations, and the institutions above water. So social science is necessary for the such management of Satoumi, and how social scientists are involved in the management is an important issue for me. So I did the translation of chapter 1.
That's good. Just stay there a little bit. Is there any difference that you find between the way social science research is done?
Same, very similar.
It's
Very
very similar.
sympathetic, yes.
It's similar. Okay, that's great. Thank you. So what are some of the most challenging points in the effort to translate this book? Let's see. Yeah, please don't. I actually have really bad eye and I really cannot see that far. Yes, please. Could you share your experience? Tell us a little bit about what chapter you're responsible for and what you think of it, and what, whether you think that was challenging or anything challenging about doing this, please.
Okay, I'm Ryutaro Kamiyama from Fisheries Research and Education Agency, Japan. And I translate the chapter titled Holistic Approach. And challenging in translation is that I have no idea on holistic approach ahead of starting the translation. It's a very new idea for me. Although I think I know some essence of the, I have already shared such idea, but my mission, I think my mission is delivering the readers the meaning of holistic approach easily or in the way, understandable way. And so my challenge was first understand the concept, and understanding the concept. Me at first. That's the challenge. That was my challenge, and I'm not sure I totally understand it, but I hope the readers can understand some of the concept.
Thank you. It is really important what you just said, because holistic and integrated approach is actually one of the principles in the small-scale fisheries guidelines. And they never really talked about, it's a lot about the ecosystem-based management, a lot of these integrated perspective, right? And the word holistic is supposed to be like, well, you should know what it is, right? And then to think about the concept and how the language that you would need in order to explain the concept. In Thailand, we suffer all the time. I don't know how to talk about transdisciplinarity in Thailand without saying TD, because I can't translate what it is. In Thai, even the word interactive governance, my own research, I can't do it. So I sympathize with you when it comes to holistic and integrated approach, but at the same time, it's about communication. It's about the message that you're giving, whatever term you want to call it. So that's great. Thank you so much. Next to you, Yunji. Yeah, could you tell us a little bit about your role, your assignment for this book, and you know what you think about it and how that relates to people in Japan?
Okay. So, well, first of all, my research focus is not in Japan. I mean, my research focus is in the Philippines. So perhaps I wouldn't be able to talk so much about the Japanese sort of or implications for the Japanese fisheries, sorry. Yeah. So I translated chapter 29, words matter. And that's all about the language and then how language plays out in a policy making and also actual implementations of all different types of fishery-related policies. And then that is actually I translated with a great interest in a topic, as it is quite relevant to what I do and what I'm interested in, and also my focus has a lot to do with you know, defining you know, who the small-scale fishers are, and how people talk about different challenges and problems that they face in their everyday lives. And yes, I found his argument quite it's communicative. It's explained in extremely kind of a plain language, even though even when he uses the you know, these conceptual ideas, you know, it seems a bit difficult for you know, for the general audience to grasp the meanings of those, but he kind of unpacks with different examples based on his own experiences, or reference citing, you know, other people's work. But I found it's quite interesting, and then I especially when I think about who small-scale fishers are, and then how there are different views, even in the context of the Philippines. His argument, you know, it really kind of made me think about, you know, the different ideas, different sort of names, different languages and words that we use to call a certain group of people. It can make a huge difference, and it's something that we have to be, you know, a bit more careful doing it. And then often we don't really pay much attention to it. And then that's that sort of a thing that he was really pointing us to, you know, to think about. And the challenges that I found, the difficult thing about the translation is the well, I guess this was my first translation, translating work. So I guess you know, when it's for the first time, there are, you know, unexpected you know, challenges along the way. But other than that, I think it went pretty smoothly, and then I thoroughly enjoyed the whole process.
That's great. Thank you. Now, imagine, right, that the words matter. How small-scale fisheries are defined also matter. And we have, I mean, you know, we could share some of the experience, right, in terms of the definition. There's always this question about, well, who are small-scale fisheries? What are small-scale fisheries? And in the whole small-scale fisheries guidelines, you know, the debate about that started when we were drafting what we call zero draft of the small-scale fisheries guidelines. So I was one of the, you know, experts in that drafting exercise. And we, you know, it was very easy for us to say, well, we don't define them, because who are we to define them? And what will be the definition that would work for small-scale fisheries around the world anyway? And that's the same approach we took in TBTI. We never said what small-scale fisheries are. So we kind of left it to people, right? That's exactly what the guidelines said too. Countries should provide definition. But then somehow or another, because I visited Japan many times, and I know Kate has spent time here, many people have done that. I kind of felt that small-scale fisheries in Japan, I don't know whether people recognize them I don't know whether people know that they are different from large-scale industrial fisheries. And I'm just curious about whether this book or the way, you have written the Japanese small-scale fisheries book, how important is it to communicate to the general public and also to the government about small-scale fisheries of Japan are different, at least from large-scale industrial fisheries, and that we need to have a way to talk about them and have a way to write policies and, and provide mechanisms to support them and to make sure that they are valued for their contribution. I know that the book talks a lot about that, and I'm not sure whether, also professor who joined online, whether you can comment on that a little bit. And you can start, of course, from telling us which chapter you were asked to do. Yinji, Professor, can hear or not?
Yes, I can hear you. I
Yes,
hope you can
thank you.
hear me.
Thank you. We can hear you. Perfect.
Very good. Thank you very much. I'm George Morista from Tokyo University of Marine Science and Technology. And first, probably I have to apologize that I cannot be there with you, my fellow translators, because I have another meeting starting from 10 p.m. with Canadians and some of American people in a different time zone. So sorry about this. Maybe I should start from how I was involved in this project, and that probably partly answer some of the question raised. I was first invited to join to write a chapter in the book about Japanese small-scale fisheries in the era of big change. And somehow I was assigned to write about the Marine Protected Area, MPA. And MPA, for most of people, is sort of a global issue. And establishing a big no-take zone in the high seas, and so that the large-scale industrial fishing activities could be restricted or prohibited in order to protect the biodiversity in the high seas. And I was invited to join the book about small-scale fisheries in Japan. That's a big question or a big challenge for me. But actually, that hit one of the most important issues as long as the marine protected area is concerned. When you really try to protect the marine biodiversity or marine ecosystem, the hotspot or focal area is rather coastal waters where small-scale fisheries are conducted, rather than in the high seas. Because many of the biological people with biological background should know that the density of the fish and other the marine species is actually higher in the coastal area than the high seas area, because they're much more nutrient and much more dynamic. The ocean activities are conducted in the coastal area. So that was my first encounter, and one of my main point in my the chapter in the book was actually you have to look at coastal waters if you are really trying to protect marine ecosystem and biodiversity through MPAs. That was for some people it's counterintuitive idea. And interestingly, when I was asked to join this particular project, the translation of Professor Jentoft, again, I was assigned about MPA. And his first word is exactly my idea. He was talking about the MPA in the coastal area. And he also says that it is important to look at the coastal area and small-scale fisheries if you really want to protect the biodiversity. So what I started in the first involvement of our book is exactly the idea he was talking about. So in that sense, the job of translation was much easier for me. And when we talk about the marine protected area, again, the general perception is this is a tool to protect the marine diversities and the environment. And there is not much mention about the fisheries or fishermen, especially not coastal fishermen. And that is exactly the main point of the part I translated. And I found throughout my job of translating this piece, I keep saying, yes, it is. Yes, that's exactly the point. It was much easier for me because the contents of the original article I translate is exactly in line with what I have been thinking about. So as to the connection with Japan, maybe I should have wrote another chapter because the Japanese fishermen has been, or Japanese fisheries management has been using the area-based management tools for a long time. So in the sense, we have a lot of experience of using something like marine protected area in the context of a small-scale coastal fisheries. So this could be also the extension of two articles, mine and Professor Jentoft's the article. So it was very enjoyable experience to me. Like I said, I'm not exactly answering your question, but just try to explain how my area is connected to the small-scale fisheries and also the potential for Japanese small-scale fisheries. Thank you so much.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. It's amazing to relate what you just said with what we are experiencing, right? There's a lot of MPAs that are being created to exclude people, to prevent access of people to gain livelihoods, even though that's their traditional ground. So the MPAs that I know that work are those that are actually including people and figured it out through that process, what would work as in terms of protection. And many of the small-scale fishing people in their communities are the best in stewardship. They have been related, connected to the place, and have been doing that for centuries. So they know what they're talking about. So removing them is not a solution. Including them in the process of creating MPA is indeed much more important. We were just told that we had to finish this session at 8:30, and I thought we have more time, but that means we would go out and have a little bit of a party outside. That celebration can continue. So in the last 5 minutes or so, right, Professor Tetsu, you didn't say yet what chapter you were assigned to do. Maybe a little bit about your chapter first.
Yeah, quickly, I was asked to translate chapter 14, I think, about the healthy community, healthy fishing community. And it was okay for me. But I also volunteered to translate chapter 2, the poverty chapter, because that is my the topic of research for past decades. And these two chapters I really liked because these two chapters are really dealing with so-called wicked problems, very complicated and difficult issues. And these wicked problems, the the Professor Jentoft proposed some integrated research to understand the situation and try to explore the visions of solutions. And I really liked this type of approach. And probably one thing that is missing from his description was the procedural knowledge or transformative knowledge to bring about the target in the real world. And this type of comment I really wanted to make in my comments.
Great.
Thank you.
So maybe this is a question to Yunji and Tamano, right? Because you didn't include all chapters. I wanted to know why some of the chapters you decided not to include in your translated book.
Well, we want to pick up the chapters that are mostly relevant to the things in Japan, the Japanese small-scale fisheries. And yeah, that's the reason for, doing.
So let me ask specifically, because there's a chapter about human rights. Did that one get translated? I don't want to put you on the spot, but maybe it's not an issue, right, in Japan, and that's probably why, which is good. I mean, there are many other cases, in small-scale fisheries that are really suffering with that one. Okay, you must have an idea about what you want to achieve with this book. I wanted to hear a little bit about what your plan is in terms of what you want to do with it when it's translated. And what would be the outcome of this translated book? And don't forget to tell us what it is. What is the title in Japanese? Okay. Anybody in the group, please, or every one of you, if you like.
Okay, just one word from me, and then I'll get on to others. Yes, what we want to achieve from doing this. Again, first of all, bringing people together, togetherness, ichidanketsu, again here. Yes, and last time we did, what we did was having people outside of Japan to understand what's going on in Japan, and I think maybe this time it's turn to let people in Japan know better about the things outside of Japan. So maybe that's what I'm thinking.
That's great. Thank you. Others, do you have any? Tamano, you have some. What do you know? What do you want to do with the book? It's going to soon be released.
Achieve by doing this.
I mean, this book is Love Above the Water is very important for us, and then the Dr. Jentoft papers and the books are a must read for researchers. But I would like to introduce them to a broader audience in Japan, maybe.
You're going to make your students read it, I suppose. So that would be good. That not just the students. Who are the target? Who do you think would be the best audience, the best target for this book? It's a must read, but I mean, is it for government? Is it for communities? Is it for students, researchers?
All of them, including
all of them. But I want to introduce to the fisheries. Maybe I want to read this book. Yeah.
You think the government, like fisheries officers or your minister of fisheries, right, or whatever that division is, how would you make them read the book? Do you think they should read the book? And how would you make them read the book?
Yeah, we definitely should have the government officers read this book. And we actually have couple of officers contributed the short communication essays in here. Yeah. And how do we get people to read this? that's what we're going to do for the next step. Now book is here. It's 수면조の生命. 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 It's a life above water. Yes. 수면조の生命.
Then you can add the ichi together.
一団結.
So life above water together, right? You know. Okay, excellent. Thank you again, all the panelists, for sharing your perspective and really for doing the work, because based on what you just shared with us, this was not a piece of cake, but you did enjoy it, it seems. And yes, go ahead. And anybody, if you have anything else you'd like to say, also the professor who's joining from Tokyo, go ahead, please, Professor Desu.
Thanks. I really want to give feedback to Professor Jentoft about our comments. So I would ask Inji and Tamano-san to translate our comments and also comments from Fishers and all other added part of this translation book to the original author to give him feedback. And also I really want you, the international audiences here today, to try to check the Japanese part of newly added comments using machine translation or anything, so that you will find out the essence of this interesting endeavor of the translation.
This is actually a great idea. Once you have translated it, I mean, of course, Professor Jentoft would have to read, right, what you translated. So this become like a traveling book. So it should go from, you know, place to place, and then other countries could also do a bit of translation by Google or whatever to start with, and just get curious about, oh, so this is how Japanese perspective about life above water. And then many countries can do the same, and then we'll have a lot of fun, right? And then, yes, okay, we can try that for sure. Others, anything else? Final word from anyone? Go ahead, please.
With regard to my chapter 1, the target, I think target of the chapter 1 is the academia, particularly Japanese academia. In this chapter, Jentoft Sensei didn't mention about the transdisciplinary approach you did session just time before. I think combining above water and underwater is an important issue now. To do so, firstly, various scientists with knowledge of various disciplines have to participate in decision-making process of fisheries management together. Secondly, these scientists and other stakeholders have to communicate and collaborate. And finally, seek practical resolutions. I think that is a just transdisciplinary approach, TD approach. In Japan, such a transdisciplinary approach is not so popular. So from now, we have to think about such approach. Thank you.
That's great. So what we need is to organize a TD workshop, a TD training workshop in Japan, which we will do because we like coming back here. Yes, okay, thank you. Anybody else online? No? Okay, well, let's give a big round of applause and congratulations once again. Thank you everyone for joining. We would end the session for tonight, and we will be seeing you tomorrow at the plenary. Tomorrow plenary, it would start with something you don't want to miss, especially the people here. It's adjusting the food lens. There will be cooking. The chef would come to cook some food for us. And there would be giving the food, right, that they cook to the lucky winners. So make sure you show up to be the lucky winners. Okay. Have a good night. Bye-bye.